Hey guys, in this video I'll be walking you guys through how to set up and manage your app settings using Azure App Configuration. Following that, I will show you how to make use of those app settings in a .NET environment using role-based access control, and then in production using Azure App Service Managed System Identity. But before that, I will show you how to manage your app settings using normal JSON files in the .NET environment, and moving over to production using Azure App Service App Configuration, before then diving deeper into Azure App Configuration.
Preview.
Alright guys, I will first start with setting up environment variables using app settings.json file in your .NET environment for local development. Then I'll move over to deploying the app in app service and setting up your environment variables using app service app settings. Before we start, I assume you have basic knowledge of C# and .NET, have built a .NET project before to be able to understand whatever I'm going to be doing right now. So yeah, I'll just proceed now to create a new .NET Razor page application. Okay, just bring up my terminal. No, this should be the folder. Let's be .NET. So I'll be creating a new .NET app using the .NET new Razor CLI command. I'll be calling this testing. Let's see the testing. Open this up in VS Code. So yeah, this is the basic structure of a Razor page application. You got the program.cs file and got the pages file. The pages directory. So I'll go ahead to run the application. .NET run. Here we go. So yeah, this is a landing page for the Razor app. So alright, I'll just proceed to creating a simple variable in the app settings.json file. So I'll call this message and I'll say hello world. Then I'll go ahead to print this in my index.cshtml file, which is the home page. So before I do that, I'll first get the configuration object using the dependency container by passing the configuration object by getting it from the dependency container through the constructor of the index model page. Then I'll declare. I'll create a private variable here and pass this here over here, and also create a property, a public property. So basically, for a page in Razor pages, you can set up properties which you want to access in the markup file. So the property I'm setting up here is a string property called message. Then in here I can then initialize it to the variable I created in the app settings.json file, which is here. So I'll go ahead and render this using the Razor directive at model.message. I think everything should work fine. So let me go ahead and refresh the page after we run the application. So here we go, we have hello world. I can also, assuming you've got like services you need to set up before starting up your application. For example, you have a database like an Azure SQL database or Cosmos DB database. You might want to use these environment variables in your program.cs file anywhere. If you're going to be using it anywhere, you can use the program, the I configuration object, which I already made use of here, to get the message property from app settings.json file. Assuming you want to make use of it in the program.cs file, you can use the builder. So I'll do this before the builder.build. So I'll go up there, because when you run when you build the application, basically the builder is read only, and some things might not be able to, some properties and some things won't be able to go through. So you just need to set it up before building the app. So in here I will get that message property. So the message variable which I set to my app settings.json, I'll call this string message builder.configuration. So you could access this like a normal property in an object, or use the get value method and infer the type of what you're trying to get. So the type is a string. Then I can go ahead to display this in my console. So if I run the app, you can see message hello world. Then for example, assuming you've got like connection strings, like I know Azure SQL, Cosmos DB, and some other services like app configuration as well. It's got connection strings. So assuming you've got connection strings, you can decide to set them up in your app settings.json file and use a specific method to get them. So in here, I'll create a connection strings variable, which is an object, and yeah, maybe default connection. I can also, set up something else, maybe like called Azure SQL or whatever. So whichever variable name you want to use is fine. Then in my program.cs file, instead of accessing this using like prefixes, so let me say string connection string prefix. So I'll access this using the prefix first, and I'll also access it using the get connection string method. So yeah, so you can see that whichever way works fine for you. Because now the reason why there's that get connection string method is in which I'll still get to in an app service. Under the configuration menu, you've got app settings and connection strings. So using that connection string just helps you, differentiate from normal environment variables to connection strings for services. So that get connection string already prefix. So like it just adds that connection strings prefix to when you're trying to access any of those connection strings. So it makes it easier, something like that, to differentiate what you're trying to access. So that's why there's that specific method get connection strings. So I'll use the get connection strings here. Get connection string, sorry. And I'll remove the prefix over there. I'll remove this as well. And I'll call this I'll just call this connection string. And I'll proceed to display it in the console. You can see this works. So this is still the same variable I'm trying to get, but just using different properties. So get value works and get connection string works. So yeah, that's all about it for setting environment variables using your app settings.json file or app settings.development file. So yeah, so next step is deploying this app to app service and setting environment variables in your environment variables in the app service app settings. So yeah guys, next step is deploying this app to app service. But before we proceed, I want to also show you that you can also do this in here. So I think what I should do is just normally you shouldn't be doing this because you're not trying to display your connection strings to the user, but just to show you I could do something like that in here as well. So let me say assuming you've got public, and also for testing purposes, because when I deploy I also want to get the connection string from the app service connection strings menu and display it in the web. So I'll just call this connection string and set this to configuration.get connection string default connection, and I'll display it in my browser. I'll call this message. I'll call this model.connection string. Go ahead and rerun. So yeah, this works. So yeah, that sums it all up. So next step is deploying this app to an app service. So I'll first start with creating a resource group. The reason I'm creating a resource group is to keep everything encapsulated. So when I'm done, I can easily delete it. So I'll create a resource group. So before you create a resource group, you need an Azure account. I've got one already. portal.azure.com. For you to create an Azure account, you can go to azure.microsoft.com to create an account. So yeah, once you've created an account, you have your dashboard, your portal. So you can create your services, your Azure app service using the portal, or you can use the Cloud Shell using Bash or PowerShell. But I will be making use of Azure CLI. I downloaded and installed it on my system. So I'll just proceed with that. So the command, I'll create the screen so you guys can see clearly. So I'll be running the command AZ to create a new resource group. AZ group, create resource group. testing, location UK West. Then I'll create an app service plan for the app service plan, AZ app service plan. Create a resource group, testing, location UK West. And I'll be using the free tier, which is F1. And the name of the app service will be called testing plan. The next step is deploying the app. So I can create the app and then deploy it. I could use one single command to just create and deploy the app straight away. So you could use AZ web app create to create the web app and then deploy it yourself, or you could use AZ web app up to deploy. But I mean, when we get to the Azure configuration aspect, I will also be walking you guys through deploying the app, redeploying the app. So right now I'll use the AZ web app up to create and deploy the app service. So first I'll set in the resource group. So the app service plan falls under the resource group, and the app service falls under the app service plan, which also falls under the same resource group. So we'll call this testing. So this is testing already from the resource group already created. Then if you want to add multiple arguments, you can use the backslash to keep things more readable and concise. So in here I'll set the plan to testing plan. Then the location to UK West. Then the name of the app. So the name of your Azure App Service app should be unique, globally unique, because they are all hosted as subdomains to azurewebsites.net. So I can't use testing here because most likely it's taken. So I'll be using Freeman Codes testing for the name of the app. So yeah, this is going to take a few seconds to a minute thereabout to create. So yeah, I'll be pausing the video for now and resuming when it's done. So yeah guys, this has been deployed. The app has been deployed to Azure App Service. So I'll go ahead to run this in the browser. So voila, so there we go. So first and foremost, so these are the variables already declared here. So by default, so these are the variables we declared locally. By default in your app service, it displays or it gets your environment variable. It tries to first get them from your app settings. So let me go and refresh my portal. So I'll go to my app services. So Freeman Codes testing, which is the app service I created. And I'll go to the environment variables. App settings, I have none of those created. No connection string as well. So now it first tries to get those settings from here. If they are not created, then it looks for them in your app settings.json file and renders them. So the first point of contact is your app service environment variables. If those variables have not been created, then it checks your app settings, your local app settings. If they're not there as well, it should throw an error. So yeah, I'll go ahead and create those environment variables now using AZ command. I could create them here or create them using the AZ CLI or the Cloud Shell. But I'll be creating them using Azure CLI. So the command to create settings should be AZ web app config, app settings set. Then I'll use the backslash to keep things readable. The name of the app service is Freeman Codes testing, if I'm correct. Freeman Codes testing. Then I'll use the backslash as well. Set the resource group testing. Use the backslash as well to set the key and the value. I'll call this message and then set this to hello Freeman. Did I make a mistake? Oh yeah, I was meant to use the settings. I was meant to add that settings property. So yeah, that has been created. So I'll just go ahead and refresh this. So when the settings is created, the app restarts. So this was the variable I created, message hello Freeman. If I refresh now, it it should be displayed here, so it gets hello Freeman. I'll do the same for the connection string as well. For the connection strings, instead of using the app settings, you change it to connection strings. Every other thing remains the same, but because it's a connection string, you have to set the type because it's linked to. It could be linked to an Azure app. It's linked to an Azure app service, so you just need to set the type to to differentiate what connection string is from which. So I'll call this default connection. And then I'll set this to Azure SQL. Then I'll set the connection strings type as well. Connection string type to MySQL. I think SQL Azure should be the right one. Oh, that was meant to be connection string, not connection strings. Yep. That should also trigger a restart of the application. Here I've got the default connection. When I restart the app, I should have that here. So yeah, that sums it all for setting up environment variables using app settings.json and your Azure app service app settings and connection strings. So yeah guys, next up is using Azure App Configuration. So basically, Azure App Configuration centralizes your app settings. Since ASP.NET Core is built on various configuration providers, you can basically use Azure App Configuration for that instead of setting up environment variables in your app settings.json file and then doing the same in your app service. You can easily just set everything up in App Configuration and connect to it locally using your default Azure credential, which makes use of a series of options in an order to access the Azure App Configuration either in a local environment or in Azure. Well, yeah, I'll get straight into it so you guys will understand better. So first and foremost, I'll proceed to creating the configuration store, the Azure App Configuration store, using the AZ app config command. So AZ app config create. I'll call this. I'll set the resource group I created earlier, testing. Then the name of the config store should be testing config store, SKU to free, and the location to UK West. So yeah, also this is similar to the app service. So the name of your configuration store should be unique. So I'm going to call this Freeman codes. Testing store. That's a very long name, to be honest with you. So yeah, this is going to take a few seconds to create, so I'll be pausing the video and resuming when it's done. So yeah, the configuration store has been created. I can show that to you guys as well. Let's close this. So let me open the resource group testing. So I've got the configuration store here, so you can see the rest of the services which I created. So I've got the testing config store, and yeah, this is it. So now proceeding to setting up keys and setting up the app settings using key value pairs. Basically, I could do that using the Azure portal as well as the Cloud Shell or the AZ CLI. I will create one. I'll create a very simple one using the Azure portal first. Then I'll proceed to creating another one using the CLI. So I'll call this team dark, no label, no content type. So a label here, you can use a label to differentiate from maybe a dev environment or a production environment. You could as well use prefixes as well. So I'll just apply this. That's been created. So in here, I also create one app config kv, if I'm correct. Then set the name of the config store, which I'm trying to create environment variables for. Just name config store. I think I need to set the resource group as well. Then the key, I'll call this test. So I could do something like dev testing, but I'll just proceed to calling it settings message and the value to hello from app configuration. Did I make a mistake somewhere? Is it app config kv set? I didn't set the key. Oh, sorry, I didn't use the hyphen and the value. Unrecognized, so yeah, I don't need to set the resource group then. So yeah, that has been created. If I refresh, you can see this here. So yeah, that is all about it. So next stop is, I could as well do the same and use a label instead. Set this to production or dev. Set dev. Yes. Refresh. You've got the same key, the same keyboard, different labels basically. So I'll go ahead and delete one of them. That's the dev one. So yeah, next up is using those settings both for local development and production development. So I'll go ahead to get into installing the Microsoft.azure.configuration, ASP.NET Core package, and Azure.identity for authentication. So just copy this from NuGet. So yeah, that has been installed. So I'll go ahead, let me zoom out a bit. It's too for you. I'll take this off. Add my using statement here. Azure, yeah, app configuration. So in here, I'll be getting my configuration store. So builder.services.add Azure App Configuration. Set the options to connect using the endpoint of my I could use a connection string. I could just add a connection string here, and that is it. But the recommended way of doing this is using Microsoft Entra. So I will be using the endpoint, then authenticating using any of the various credentials I've got. Right now, I'm authenticated using the CLI. In production, I'll be using the managed identity, which I'll get into once I'm done with local development. So I'll set this using options. No, stop using the. So my endpoint should fall under here. I'll be getting the endpoint from my app settings.json file. What was this? I make a mistake. So yeah, that should be configuration. So string endpoints. So yeah, I'll call it app config endpoints. So I'll go ahead and set it up here. So I'll get endpoint from my app configuration store. So I'll go under settings, access settings, and endpoint here. You can see the connection string over here. I'll be using the endpoint and Microsoft Entra ID to authenticate. So I'll set this up here. And I've got endpoint there. I think there's just some issue with if it's nullable. So I'll just try and error. So I think that should work. So this adds the Azure App Configuration as one of the configuration providers. Then also I'll be creating a class. So I'll call this testing app config. I'll call the folder app config, then I'll call this settings, just namespace, to easily access the settings that I've created without having to, always use strings and types, stuff like that. Then I'll be binding that settings class to the section in my Azure App Configuration. You could still decide to use your normal builder.configuration.get section, but just to make things much easier for us. So yeah, this should be it here. Then I'll import this. Then in my index.html, where I was accessing the variables I created in appsettings.json, I can go over here to get, so instead of using the configuration object, I'll use the option snapshot and a fed settings. So list the options. And I'll create a public variable here to store the settings which I'll be retrieving from app configuration. A public property, sorry. Then I'll set this to the options.value. Yeah, I'll take this off. Yep. So yeah, that's all about it. Then in my index.cshtml, I can then display, still using the same model property, I can then display the settings I've got. I've got message, and also, yeah, I've just got message, not team. Team was set as standalone. I could decide to get team if I want still, but yeah. So I'll go ahead and run the project. Now.NET Run. So yeah, guys, that took a while to build, and I'm getting a 4.0 tray error here, forbidden. I assume this should be an error related to authentication to the configuration store for my current user. So I'll just go over to the role assignment for a second. I've got an owner here. I've got just a contributor, which is not my current logged in user. I think I have to add a new role assignment, yeah, for my current logged in user, which is a guest. So I'll be adding as a data reader, because I won't be setting up environment. I'm setting up app configuration settings using the CLI. I'll be rather creating them using the configuration portal, basically. So I'll select the role which I'm trying to give access to. I think that's been selected. Then I'll click on next. Then I'll select members to free man guest to the man. Select, then review plus assign. Yep, review plus assign. Yep, so that's been assigned. So I'll go ahead and run the project again. That should work. So alright guys, I just set my CLI user as an app configuration data reader. I don't know why it took a while to update, but right now it's working. So yeah, and I'm also noticing something here. So this is not meant to be app config, it should be settings, if you guys can remember. Here I call this settings. So I'll go ahead and run the application. No, is it login? Sorry. So what's going on now again? Let's hold on a minute. So alright guys, the app is running now, and I don't know why it's taking this much time to run, but normally you should kickstart ASAP. But yeah, so now it's running. So if I go ahead and access it using the URL, you get the message hello from app configuration, which is this from here. So I just edit this, hello from app configuration. Let me try and update this as well. Apply updated key value, and I'll run my app. I'll refresh. So that's updated. So yeah, this is how you set up app configuration to run in your local .NET environment. Next up is deploying this app to app service and accessing the app configuration using the managed identity. Because if you just deploy it to app service, there's no way the app service will be able to communicate to the app configuration store. So you first need to set up a managed identity, which you then use to get the token from Microsoft Entra to then access the app configuration and get the settings from there. So yeah, stay tuned. So next up is deploying the app to app service and using the app service to get the app configuration from the app configuration store. So normally what I would have done is to just push this to a GitHub repository and it's auto deployed to the app service, but I'll be doing the deployment manually. If you want a detailed walkthrough on how to deploy your app automatically on every push to GitHub, I have a blog post which I'll be linking down in the description, so you guys can check it out and see how you can deploy your app easily to app service using a GitHub workflow. So I'll just go ahead and publish this using .NET. I'll just clear the screen so we'll have a blank screen over here. .NET publish release, and I'll set the output to /publish. Now I'll go over to the publish. So for it to deploy, I need to zip up the publish.zip, zip up the files in the publish.zip directory and then deploy it using Azure Web App Deploy, which I already mentioned earlier. So navigate to the publish directory, then zip the contents to a publish.zip file and set the source to everything inside the publish file, which is this. So yeah, and now navigate out, then I'll run the Azure Web App Deploy command. The name of the app is Freeman Codes Testing, if I'm correct. I think it's fine if I write this lowercase. Then the resource group is testing. Then I have to set the source directory, which is ./publish.zip. I'm currently in testing. That's the directory up there. I'm currently in testing, so I have to set it to the publish.zip directory folder. Let's go out. So yeah, this is going to take a few seconds to deploy. So I'll be pausing the video right now. I mean, it should be done now, but I'll just pause the video. So yeah, that's done. So I'll go ahead and open and reload the browser. That is what we have, Freeman Codes Testing.Azure. So this should throw an error because or it shouldn't be able to access the configuration store. Yeah, so it should throw an error now that the app failed to start because it can't access the configuration. If I go back to the app service, down to the logs, that is under advanced use. Debug console CMD log files within log.xml. If I scroll down to the latest log, you can see it's trying to say saying it hits, that is the physical root of the app hits an unexpected managed exception. You should see something regarding trying to access the, so yeah, unhandled exception is trying to access default Azure credential, failed to retrieve a token from the included credential. So using the various options available in the app service, it couldn't get any one step because I mean there was nothing set in the app settings, there was nothing set, no managed identity has been set up, so that's why I threw the error. So right now I'll go ahead and set up a managed identity for the app service, which I'll be proceeding with right now. So I'll just go ahead with that. So I think set up an identity for an app. So there are two identities you can set up. You can set up a system identity or a user identity, but for this service, since I want it to go down, so for a system identity, basically it's tied to this particular, it's tied to the particular service. So if I delete the service, the system identity is deleted. Unless I want to retain the identity, I can then create a user identity and just add user identity to the app service. So user identity is most suitable when you want to manage the same identity for various services. So let me say, assume you've got various services, maybe like an app service, a function app, a container app, and you want them to access the same similar resources. You could set up a single user identity and connect them to the identity, basically. So you connect the identity to those various services so you can easily access the resources using the identity. But because I'm using just one service, I'll be creating a system identity for that service. So I'll go ahead and do that now. So AZ Web App, that should be identity. If I'm correct, AZ Web App identity. I can't really remember. Let me use the help command. So as an identity assign. I'll set the name of the app, Freeman codes, testing, and the resource group should be testing. I forgot. No, I think this should work. This should just set up the identity first for that particular app service. So if I go over here now under security or settings, so under identity, you can see that the identity has been set up, the system assigned identity, and you can see the definition for a system assigned identity over here, and user assigned one as well is here also. So next step is to give that managed. So you first create a managed identity for the service, and then give it access to the app configuration. So allow it, so give it a role to be able to access the app configuration store. So I'll go ahead with that now. I think AZ role. Sure. AZ role assign. No. Yep. AZ role assignment. Great. I have said the name of the ID if I'm correct. So yeah, basically you have to set a GUID ID here. So I think a GUID is what I need to set. So I'll be copying the ID from here. So the principal ID, I can also get this from here of the app service which I want to create a role for. So AZ role assignment, create, set the name to the ID, then the is a backslash here. The role will be app configuration data reader, and the scope to the configuration store. I think I had this somewhere over here. I need to get the subscription, yeah. So before I do this, let me just use help. So I can take them out of here. So I can list my configuration stores. I get the scope. So I've got the scope over here. I'll go ahead and run this command, copy the scope. No. I'm have to change this over to I think I made a mistake somewhere. Yes, I'll change this to assignee. Set the ID to, I just need the ID. I don't need anything more more than that. So is a role assigned, create role. Oh, sorry, yeah. So the assignee is the service, then the role and the scope. So the role is the role I want to give that service, and the scope is for what service I'm giving that assignee the role for. So AZ role assignment. Great. I'll first use the scope, so I can set the long ID, then role. I'll call this Azure App Configuration. Data reader, then assignee to my object ID over here. So here that has been set up. If I go over here to the configuration store, which is this, go to access control, role assignments. Over here you can see that the app service which I just created, that is Freeman Codes Testing, has a role of app configuration data reader under the access control. So right now I think I have to restart the app, although I don't think I need to. So yeah, app works fine. So now this sums it all up. So using app configuration, you can make use of the same app settings, basically centralizing your app settings management using the app configuration store and accessing it both live, local, in any environment. You could decide to use labels to differentiate them, but yeah, that's just what app configuration store is used for basically. I mean, and also it's got quite a lot of other features, but this is just the basic implementation of using an app configuration store in your app. So I can just show you an example. So now this is my local platform and this is the production environment. So I'll go ahead and update the settings variable over here. I'll edit this. I'll call this updated app configuration. I'll save this, apply. I'll go ahead and restart my app service. So by default, the configuration variables are cached, so you need to restart your app to see the updates. So I'll restart the app. Same I'll do here as well. .NET run. If I reload, I get that value. If I reload it as well, I should get the same value. Yep. So yeah, if you guys found this video helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe for more insights and videos like this. I'll try my best possible to make the videos as short as possible, keeping at most 15-20 minutes. Yeah, so thanks for watching. I'll see you guys some other time.